Human Rights Commission says as the country continues with the nationwide lockdown, human rights must still be protected and respected. South Africa reverted to level 4 of the lockdown from the 1st of May. We're now joined live via Skype by the South African Human Rights Commission Advocate Tseliso Thipanyane. Advocate, thank you so very much for joining us here on SA Today.
Good afternoon to you and your viewers.
Just as a start, sir, as Human Rights Commission, what are your views at this time about lockdown? I mean, we have seen some very scary footage, very scary videos that we've seen mostly on social media and, of course, television news, showing sort of an abuse of power in some regards and possibly human rights violations. What has been your response in terms of the action that has been taken by some members of the South African Police Force and SANDF?
Thank you. While we as a commission appreciate the efforts by government to really address all the concerns around COVID-19, we have also expressed concerns about the conduct of some of the law enforcement officers, especially members of SABC, as well as South African Defence Force. And we have issued a statement around these issues, and will definitely be taking up some of these issues with the relevant authorities in government. Because, while it is important that, we enforce the lockdown provisions, we also have to, as organs of state, need to ensure that we live to the ideals of the Constitution, which is basically respecting the rights of every South African at this point in time.
Advocate, what I've noted is that when it comes to the Human Rights Commission, you'll often find those who are affluent and have access to information very easily and able to reach out to you for assistance where they feel that their human rights have been violated. But when we're talking about the most vulnerable in our society, I mean, we've seen situations where the SANDF has gone into shack dwellings and so forth, where perhaps people aren't readily able or know that they can perhaps reach out to the Human Rights Commission for help. And so their cases just sort of fall through the cracks and are forgotten. What is the Human Rights Commission then doing to make sure that this isn't the case and that you're not seen as this organization that perhaps helps those who already can sort of afford to get help for themselves?
Yes, we have 9 provincial officers and therefore we also have our staff members on the ground. But also the Commission has set up a committee which also includes NGOs who are members of this committee who also assist in the monitoring of the human rights aspects of the regulations. And I'm told now we have got over 200 NGOs which are working with the Human Rights Commission to ensure that there is actually an effective adherence to human rights issues during this period. But of course, there will always be challenges from time to time.
Yeah.
But we as a Human Rights Commission, we are getting more and more accessible to members of the public, and people can reach out to us. We have displayed our cell phone numbers of our provincial managers, and we are working with many other organizations, including other chapter institutions.
All right.
And of course, the media also does play.
Advocate, just if you can take us through, the process, what processes that you sort of follow when you're being asked to sort of investigate an issue where there could be a human rights violation. Let's just say I come to you, Advocate, and I say, this is what's happened to me. Take us through the process and ultimate, when you wrap up the case, what then happens? Well,
the Human Rights Commission has a mandate to actually investigate human rights violations on its own accord, but we also receive complaints. And when we get complaints and we assess them to determine whether there's actually a violation or not, and then if there is a violation, there are a number of options which we have. We can bring this to the attention of those who are responsible, or we can make a finding, or we can actually take matters to court. Sometimes, of course, we also mediate between the two parties.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions now, many rights and, people are asking questions about, the freedom of movement that is being restricted at this time. How does government and law enforcement officials ensure that, while they're trying to enforce these regulations that are obviously meant to protect us from getting COVID-19, that they don't overstep this, this freedom that is enshrined in the Constitution that stipulates our right to freedom freedom of movement. What is the justification? Some might say we're being restricted too much. We can't walk, we can't do this. What is the Human Rights Commission? What would you say to us in terms of what what the regulations say in terms of our freedom of movement?
Yeah. Well, under Hi. Hello?
I can hear you. I can hear you, sir.
Okay. I'm saying under this situation of COVID-19, our constitution does allow for some suspension or limitation of rights. And what we need to make sure is that, those limitations don't go too far. And hence the regulations have to be, tested from time to time as to whether they comply with the constitution, but also whether their implementation is also in line with the Human Rights Commission. And that's why, there are many bodies like us and others who are looking into these issues to make sure that, government does stay within its mandate of protecting and promoting human rights. And there have been a number of challenges of these regulations, and we'll see how this goes. But we as a Human Rights Commission have a mandate to ensure that the state does not actually exceed its mandate or go too far in protecting us from COVID-19.
All right. Advocate, thank you so very much for giving us your time. We do appreciate it here on SA Today. Thank you. That's Advocate Tseliso Thipanyane. Let's take a short break. Do stay with us.